Well, good afternoon, folks. I hope y'all are having a blessed day. I'm just out here cleaning my boat up a little bit, organizing some of the stuff, and I thought I'd do a little video talking about trailers for your spinner baits, swim jigs, chatter baits, and such like that. Your moving baits, your search baits, and the different trailers that you can use with them, and what trailers to use, like when and where to use them. Now, keep this in mind that this is just my opinions off of my own, experiences and how I like to do things. This is not the gospel of trailers and trailer selection, but just my own personal opinions. But let's get into it and let's get it figured out. Y'all stay tuned. So first, why use a trailer? What does it do for your lure? Well, for one, it enhances your lure's profile, and it creates action. It gives your lure different action. Let's go with your swim jig. So you've got your swim jig right here. There's not much to it just by itself. The same with your spinner baits and your chatter baits, but you add a paddle tail to it, you've made it bulkier and gave it a larger profile. And that paddle tail on the end is going to give it a little different action. Just a little subtle movements of the tail is going to give this lure more and different action to be more enticing to a fish and make this lure look a little more lifelike in the water. And it also gives the fish a bigger target to grab a hold to. He's got this right here, but nothing on it. This is a pretty small target, but you add a trailer to it, gives him a little bit bigger target. And also you got to think about this: when you add a trailer to here, it gives him something more solid to inhale than just this, and so it helps with your hookup ratio as well. Another thing is it can help your lure to be more snag resistant. Let's say you're running, let's go with a spinner bait. Let's say you're running a spinner bait and you're fishing around treetops or lay downs or something like that. You can take something like a creature bait or a crawl or something that's got, see how flat the top and the bottom are? Well, if you didn't have a trailer on here and you came across this, that's gonna want to roll on you. And so when it rolls over, say my finger's a stick, you're exposing that hook. Even if you was using something like a paddle tail, it's rounded, and so it's gonna want to roll on you. But with this, we got a trailer that's flat like this, it'll help keep your lure from rolling on you and exposing that hook, and it can help keep you from getting hung up. Also, adding a trailer can make your lure more visible in the water, especially if you're fishing low light conditions, stained or muddy water. This gets to be more visible to the fish. And a lot of these soft plastics are scented and have flavors, and the fish a lot of times will hold on to it a lot longer than they will if it was just a bare hook. So that also helps with your hookup ratio. And adding a trailer to a lure also will slow down the retrieve, even the fall rate. It can slow it down. That way you can stay in the strike zone longer. And especially something like this, those little appendages right there create drag, and so when you're reeling it back in, it's going to naturally slow that lure down, and when you cast it out, it's going to fall a little slower. So those are all things that a trailer does to improve the lure that you put it on. All right, so let's categorize the types of trailers. Now there's all kinds of different soft plastics out there. I've got a few right here. These are some of the ones that I use, but there is all kinds of different ones out there. I'm just going to show you a few that I got, that I use. So let's talk about your swim baits. I personally like to use swim baits in open water or in grass. They're real, you know, sleek, thin. They just seem to just come through grass really well. And in open water, that subtle swim that it gives to make, you know, it looks a lot like a bait fish just swimming through the water. It can attract bass from a distance. So they're really good for open water and swimming them through grass. Your different types of swim baits, like your little pintail here, your flukes, and your paddle tails. If I'm fishing open water, most of the time I'm going to use some type of paddle tail. And swimming through grass, I want to use something more like a fluke or your pintail to come through the grass a little better. Now I do use these in open water, and I do use these coming through grass, but sometimes that tail back here, I kind of get hung up on the grass, but sometimes you can use that to your advantage. And so if it's coming through that grass, you know, it'll kind of deflect off of it. You know, there's a little bit of slack in your line, and it'll kind of make your lure kind of fall for a second, and then it picks back up as you're reeling. So sometimes, you know, that can be an advantage of using your paddle tail coming through the grass. But if you're just wanting to kind of run it through that grass real smooth, your pintails or your flukes is going to be what you want to use. Now getting into your grubs, your single tails and your split tails, I really only use these in colder months or in current. Your grubs like this, to me, they just seem like if you're in current, they hold their depth a lot better. They don't come up prematurely to the top. And like in the cooler months, just that little bit with that single tail is just enough to entice that bite when them fish are cold and they're not really wanting to go after something, you know, with as much action as that. And so I like to use these single tails in cooler months. Now these split tails are great for shallow water, stained or muddy water. These tails, they move a lot of water. They cause a lot of vibration in the water. So if you're fishing, you know, in muddy or stained water where you've got a, you know, low visibility, these work really well. And they also work really good sometimes in open water too. Sometimes if I'm fishing a fluke or a paddle tail and I'm not really getting any bites, sometimes I can go with a split tail in open water, and it'll slow it down, it'll slow my retrieve down, and that little extra bit of flutter you get out of those tails can help to entice a bite if the fish are biting a little slow, or make it a little more easy to find if you're fishing open water and the water clarity is low. So these can be a good choice for open water in those situations. And they also, you know, give your lure a little extra bulk to be a little bigger target in low visibility. So a lot of times you're fishing shallower water, you know, it's a little bit more muddy or stained. The fish can see this or or find this a little better when the visibility is low. All right, so last but not least, let's get into, and I'm just going to put these together, your creatures and your crawls. So you've got your creature baits and your crawls, and I kind of use those pretty similar in the same areas. I'm mostly using crawls and creatures in shallow water, and that's because what a creature and a crawl is trying to imitate is a crawfish. And most of the time in shallow water, you're going to be fishing around submerged timber, you know, like your laydowns, stumps, treetops, and these crawls and these creatures, to me, just seem to come through those a lot better. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you know, they're flat on, or flatter, most of them. Like, well, this one right here, you see, it's round, but you've got, you know, these two, you know, they're flat. This one right here is flat, and they just come over those limbs and laydowns a lot better than something that's more rounded. And it just helps keep you from getting hung up as much. And a lot of times when you're fishing shallower water, you know, I'm back in the backwater, it's, you know, it tends to be a little more muddy most of the time. And these creatures and crawls, you know, they give your lure a lot more bulk to them. And it makes it a little easier for the fish to find them. And they put out, you know, these appendages move a lot of water, put a lot of vibration in the water, and like this one right here, it's got these ribs on it. The water passes through that, causing vibration. These fluttering cause vibration, and it just, to me, it just seems like they work better shallow water around submerged timber and stuff like that, even rocks. Now, rocks, we don't really have a lot of natural rocks, you know, big rocks, you know, in our rivers around here. It's mostly where you find your rocks around like your bridges and stuff. We don't have, other than like spots with gravel bottoms, we don't have big rocks, you know, scattered throughout our rivers. So I don't get to fish rocks that much, but you get around like a bridge or something, they put rocks in for erosion and everything, you know, it comes in to play then. But, you know, these creatures in these crawls, you know, around submerged timber and rocks is where a lot of crawfish hang out at, and so you're mimicking the forage around what you're fishing in. And a lot of times when I'm fishing shallow water, I like to let my lure drop to the bottom and then slow roll it close to the bottom. And with these appendages on here, like this one or this, yeah, it's gonna fall a lot slower. And so sometimes that fish will pick it up on the fall. Or if he doesn't and I start to slow roll it, I'll be able to slow roll whatever lure I'm using a lot easier because of the drag that these appendages create. Because if you try to reel it too fast with a trailer on your, well, no matter what kind of trailer it is, if you try to reel too fast, especially with a spinnerbait, here it is. If you're using a spinnerbait, if you reel it too fast, that spinnerbait don't want to stay straight up like this. It wants to roll over sideways. So it'll force you to slow your retrieve down so you keep your spinnerbait upright like this, and help you slow roll it toward the bottom a lot more effectively. So one more thing that I like to use is just your regular old Zoom trick worm. And I love using these as trailers. I did a little too far. Oops, about dropped. I love using these as trailers. I mean, that just gives your lure, I mean, that is a big presentation right there. I mean, and that tail, when you're swimming this spinnerbait or whatever you're using, swim jig, chatterbait, it has a different action on each lure you use, and so does all the rest of them. But that tail just has a little slight wiggle with it. It's not much, and sometimes that just drives them crazy, and it's just enough to get a bite. And that's one of my favorite trailers to use, is a Zoom trick worm. And it comes through grass really well, and it also works really well in submerged timber and treetops and such. And another one that I picked up and started using a few months ago is this, and this is the Hog Farmer Spunk Shad, and it's a pintail swim bait, and that's it right there. I get them off a Tackle Warehouse. That's the only place I've been able to find them so far. I haven't found them at a store or anything, but it has slowly become one of my favorites to use. And what I like about it so much is that it's rounded on the bottom, but the top is flat. So what I'll do is I'll take it, and instead of putting it on upright like this, I'll just flip it over to where that flat part's on the bottom, and then it works just like one of these, and it helps it come over limbs and laydowns without allowing that hook to roll from one side or the other. So this is a really versatile bait, and it's starting to become one of my favorites. I really like it, and I can take this thing, I can fish it through grass, I can fish it open water, I can fish it around treetops and laydowns. It's starting to become one of my favorite lures, and I'll show you again. It's the Hog Farmer Spunk Shad, and this is a 4.5 inch. They have different lengths, but to me that 4.5 inch is just about perfect for a trailer. last thing I want to talk about is color selection. Yeah, a lot of times you try to match the color of your trailer to the color of your lure, which is great. I do it too. But what I also like to do is mix it up a little bit, experiment. So, you know, if you have something like this right here, you've got some whites and some greens and a little purple in it. You know, something like this right here would match up perfect with it. You know, that matches up perfect. But you could take something like this right here and use that as your trailer, and that matches pretty well too, and it gives your lure a different look. This lighter colored trailer makes your lighter colors in your lure pop more, stand out more. Whereas if you used a darker color, it makes your lure a little more bold. Your darker colors stand out more. And so you got something like this right here. This is a really light colored spinnerbait, and you can add a darker color to it, and it just gives it a different look. Now with this one, let's see, where is that? Trying to find something here, hold on. So this is another Hog Farmer. This is a Sunfish Magic right here. Well, the Sunfish Magic has some greens and a little, you know, white on the bottom, a little off-white on the bottom. And it just brings out these little blues and greens a little better. And it just gives your lure a different look, makes it a little bolder. Or you could use a lighter color like this, and then it just brings out your lighter colors a little more. So experiment with your colors for your trailers and just see what works for you and what works best. And you know, if I was fishing clear water, you know, I might want to use something like this. Stained water, go with something a little darker to bring out the colored strands a little better, to make it stand out a little more. So that's about it with my little class today. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little something that you could take to the water with you next time you go. I hope you're enjoying the videos. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you don't mind too. It really helps me out a lot. It you know, I love seeing the comments that y'all have and seeing the like button getting hit. It just kind of makes what I'm doing here, you know, seem like I'm not just doing it for no reason. It really helps boost my confidence, so to say. And but hope you enjoyed it. And before I get off of here, just remember that Jesus loves you, and so do I. And get into the Word, seek God, and see how He can change your life. And I'll catch y'all on the next video. Y'all get out there and catch some fish and have some good fun doing it. I'll see y'all on the next one. Y'all be good.
Mm.